Welcome to Truth in Lending, America's coolest, hippest mortgage and real estate news podcast. Grab a hammer and turn up the volume because today we are building the future with President of Pahlisch Homes, Dan Pahlisch. Today is June 13th, 2023. Welcome to Truth in Lending.
Woohoo. Building the future.
Building the future.
Are we getting in like a DeLorean? That's what I'm picturing.
No, I went on to ChatGPT and I asked her what would be a really cool title for having a builder on. And it said Building the Future.
That's perfect.
No, you guys know how I feel about AI. I did not go on a ChatGPT.
I was wondering if you really did.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Randy's so creeped out by it.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show, Mr. Dan Pahlisch. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to know you.
You guys sound like you're just going to be grilling me the whole time.
We are actually before we get after it. You asked me if I was really a Chiefs fan, and I took offense to that.
Well, I mean, these days people wear these, you know, they're sports, and sometimes it's a gift.
He just likes
sometimes
the color red.
And we're a little far.
Yeah.
We're far from Kansas.
Yeah, no, this is true, and I've actually been guilty of asking Patriots fans that are wearing a Patriot hat, like, are you really a Patriots fan,
They're
or
not.
is it just the
They're not.
six?
It's just the Tom Brady effect.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I actually have your own intro music, so let's go with it.
Oh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Everybody, welcome to the studio and to Truth in Lending, Dan Pahlisch. Oh, that was the wrong one. Let's try that again.
I'm assuming there's supposed to be claps coming, but
Yeah, no, I can't figure it out.
This is the same reception I get at my office.
there it is.
We still miss you, Joey. We still miss you. So, Dan, give us the quick 411. What makes you an expert to be on the show to talk about all things building and construction?
Oh, man, I'm the furthest thing from an expert. You guys invited me, and I said, heck yeah, I'll come do this. No, honored to be on it. I over 20 years in the industry. So actually before that in the 90s, helping a really small ma and pa shop, you know, Portland home builder on the job sites, sweeping streets, picking up scrap piles, doing what any other 12, 13-year-old should do. Went off to college and then graduated in 2003 and moved here and haven't looked back. So been in it for, hard to believe, but over 20 years now, and I'm just barely over 40, just by a couple years.
43?
Couple 42.
42. Okay, I got you by a year.
Did you grow up in the Portland area?
I did, Wilsonville,
Awesome.
Westland area.
Oh, okay. And then Central Oregon. So yeah, anyone that's listening from the whole Pacific Northwest, you'll know Pahlisch.
Yep.
How long has Pahlisch been in Central Oregon?
Since 2002.
2002.
Yep. Yeah, we started kind of casing the place out a little bit in 2001. We vacationed here like everyone else. In fact, I met some guys in Sun River this weekend, and they're visiting for the first time. And I said, oh, man, get out of here, because if you come back again, you'll be moving here in no time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was cool.
And you're like, and when you do, I'll have a house built for you.
Oh, yeah, I definitely put the shameless plug out there.
That's perfect.
You guys have built a few homes in the area.
Yeah.
One or two thousand. Do you know what the count is? Just in Central Oregon, or
just in Central Oregon, a couple thousand. Yep. I think over time it's creeping up to about 5,000 homes.
Wow. Do you know how many homes that you guys have built just all on all the states that you service over time from the beginning?
Oh, I think about 5,000 homes.
Wow.
Yeah. In the early days, the company was founded in '83 officially, but my folks were building homes since the late '70s, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
So
I feel like the 5,000th home should be free.
we could work something out like that.
Okay.
You know,
I dig it.
Might take a little time.
He'll get you on the next one.
So, you know, the big trigger word for everybody lately has been inflation. We've all been fighting it. Inflation, cost to build, things like that. How have how builders specifically, and maybe not just you, but maybe if you speak on more of a little bit of a broad spectrum, how have you been able to maintain profitability with the construction costs being what they are?
Mm-hmm. It's a multiple prong approach. I mean, truthfully, this last cycle, what we all lived through with the pandemic and just the instantaneous change that we were experiencing from, you know, us all kind of wondering, were we about to enter, another Great Recession.
Right.
How bad could it get? You just watch the data. You watch the data to see like what your model home traffic is doing. You try to really carefully monitor your starts. We've been fortunate that kind of the laws of economics with supply and demand have allowed us to price appropriately. I think the last year and a half, it's actually been more about how do we moderate these price increases. Obviously, a builder can only withstand so much cost increase before they have to build that into their purchase price. Otherwise, it'll be a failed business. But I think, the elephant in any podcaster's room that has anything to do with real estate is just how long can affordability, the lack of affordability, still allow us all to operate in our respective field, whether it's home loans or building.
Right.
Yeah, it's been nice that even though the costs have gone up, the purchase prices have been supported just because of the lack of inventory too. So you've kind of been supported for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. I think we're in unprecedented times right now. I mean, I think there's going to be storytelling 2 or 3 years from now about the days from 2021 to 23 where we saw unprecedented supply. I think we're being propped up right now as an industry just by the lack thereof. You know, and what does that mean for our future? And I think that's why it's good to get together and just talk about it with a bunch of people with different lenses, how they look at it.
Well, let's just make one thing clear. This is not just any podcast. I'm trying not to take offense here. Rarely do I get offended, but the Chiefs fan and just another podcast. I'm kidding. So
never getting invited back again.
Never.
That was my goal, you guys. If these aren't the favorite things to do, so you just come and you offend. And at the end of this, I'm going to say, hey, besides me, who is your least favorite visitor on the Truth and Nothing podcast?
It's like doing dishes poorly, so you don't get asked to do it again.
And not folding laundry properly. Yeah. And, how has the impact of rising interest rates been affecting you guys on building?
Good timing. I think in the last 2 weeks, you guys, with them cresting up, for a lot of people near the 7s, you see it right away. You see it in some sale fails, maybe a contract where you already had a buyer experiencing a little bit of that tingly buyer remorse feeling. And as soon as they creep up, even if they're locked maybe at a lower rate, they bail. So we experienced that that's real time last week and a half, 2 weeks, not to a degree where it shutters your business or you're overly worried, but you see it that quickly. And so
you see the cold feet.
Yep. And I think we all experienced it tremendously February to April, a year and a half, almost a year and a half ago now, where people were really trying to adjust. Those first couple quarters, though, what I think people did is it almost pushed them off the fence to say we better act now. And I think those people are probably thankful they did.
Or the other way.
Dan, you probably don't recall this, but I actually had a client. I'm not going to mention them by name. We had final approval. Docs were out. They were buying a Pahlisch home, and they got scared. And I think at that time rates were 4.5%.
Yeah.
So that would have been somewhere around April of last year. And Katie and I have often talked. Our predictors or our forecasts of where we think rates are going to be, and I've really been on the 7 to 8% bandwagon until we see what the Fed wants, and the Fed wants a little bit of pain, right? Yeah. Until we see that pain, 4.5%. I don't know that we'll see that again, but like you said, sale fails. That's that's a big one for you guys.
So I think combating it, just to answer that question, it's kind of on the consumer. I mean, we can only adjust prices so much to actually make a dent on what that new payment might mean for that family. And again, with just the lack of supply, I think people have just gotten used to the new norm. I remember growing up, we're the same age. Yeah. And our, influencers in our early days would tell us, hey, if you can get a 6% mortgage, 5.5 to 6.5%, you're doing good. Stay in the game. Like, own a home, own it for enough time that you can see some real value creation and make a move.
We didn't have YouTube back then, but we did have newspapers.
You had influencers.
We did.
Have you heard recently they're starting to do de-influencers? So there's people who are like advocating against things.
Oh.
So make sure you avoid those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I play volleyball. Close friends with a friend from the city of Bend who helps with doing permits and going through everything. And he was saying in early 2020, he's like, we're so slammed. We're just trying to keep up, and a stack keeps getting higher. And then he was out playing volleyball a lot more in like the end of 2020 and 2021. And he's like, yeah, we're just so far behind that it doesn't matter anymore. We're just gonna keep going. Not doesn't matter. Take that as a grain of salt. But really, you get to a point where it's just so backed up. And so you guys have probably seen that, getting permits, going through all the hoops that the cities or any developmental plans are going to go through. So can you speak to how you saw that through all of COVID ramp up?
Well, yeah, the city, you said City of Bend was your friend. They were an actual, each jurisdiction behaved a little differently through that crisis. The City of Bend was one that did not return to work very quickly in terms of in the office place. So they were trying to use systems that were designed around brick and mortar,
Paper.
and tried to integrate themselves from afar, all at the same time, while trying to, I believe, I know they were launching a new intake system for their permits and how to process them. And so, I think I wouldn't be offending anybody at the city or anywhere else if I said that we all kind of suffered together for a while, trying to get that turnaround time more within what I think we would expect as taxpayers and community members. And that's kind of just that's a forever battle that I think developers and home builders face, is wanting to get quicker turnaround, especially when you are putting in a new project and you see asphalt on the ground, pretty concrete sidewalks, everything ready to go. And sometimes you guys, it's months. I mean, sometimes it's months before you can get a final stamp and actually start home building.
Yeah.
So.
I got a totally random question. When was the last time you swung a hammer?
Man, I knew you were going to ask this one. So I'm the middle child, and we quickly found out that my role was in humans. Construction. I did swing a hammer though. I still do stuff around the house, but I'm not going to be the craftsman that's out there. I'm thankful to report that you're in good hands with all the people we do employ to build a really well built home.
Keep Dan off of the home building, I think is what he's saying.
Right. So
for best results.
One of the things that was really tough during the pandemic was finding workers. Right. I mean, just as a consumer on my end, we were going through a remodel that we assumed would take 3 to 4 months. That ended up being a 2-year project. We had gone through several electricians, a couple of different plumbers, two or three different painters, and people would just not get on the horn to return phone calls. And it was because they were so busy and so inundated that they were just willing to just sort of let things go. And so, thinking of how many subcontractors you guys must have, did any of that plague you, or do you still experience any of that?
We do. I've tried to put it in perspective for many, and I've used this story because it's real. My wife and I had some work that we needed done on our roof. We had 3 roofers at the time just here in Central Oregon doing the bulk of our work, and all wonderful businesses, great people. I didn't get a call back, and I didn't press the name. I never even I don't think I even used the whole name. It was just trying to get some help at my personal home. And they're out on our jobs, by the way, so I don't want to, pull them off, but I didn't get a call back.
Wow.
And this was about 1.5 years ago. And so it does speak to it. And you guys, that's a nationwide issue that we're facing that I think touches on a lot of stuff. We could almost do an entire podcast on our education system, how early children are being influenced by where their path might be, right? We know that school's not for everybody now, and I think that this is a huge opportunity for our children
to learn a trade,
and be able to provide them for themselves with their own hands and the intelligence they have to build a business and do very well for themselves.
It's a little late for you to learn a trade, though, right?
Yeah, it's way too late for me. I can't. Way too late.
So, another thing that's really been plaguing the nation, and you alluded to it earlier, is inventory. Just here, a little microcosm of the nation here in Central Oregon, the inventory is just so stinking low. And if you've listened to the show before, people know I love graphs. I'm a graph man. I'm definitely a graph man. And I'm just looking at what the last 4.5 years on this graph that I have the rolling average for inventory. And we're kind of on the upswing. News made it earlier this week that nationwide inventory increased by over 1.5%, which like, ooh, wow, that's
Yeah.
huge. But when you're talking 4,000 homes across the nation additionally went on the market in 1 week, that's nothing.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And so, new construction kind of seems like it's one of the only games in town. You among other builders and, builders across the nation, it seems like one of the only games in town. So alluding to that with the big, housing shortage here, what do you think you can do to solve this problem, or what can the nation do? And I hate to ask governmental questions because we are not a political podcast, but what do you think are some of the things that can be done to increase inventory and to battle this housing shortage that we have?
Yeah. What a talking point, right? I mean, this is on everything from Wall Street Journal to the local podcast and beyond. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the biggest hurdle, I think we're past actually. I think it's awareness of the issue and having it be, it's hard to not talk about politics if you're going to talk about the real world because it is part of our day to day. This is bipartisan. Our local mayor is one of her key initiatives was housing, and years ago you wouldn't necessarily think that from her political background, and so I think awareness is number one, and then you combat it with whether it's government subsidy or some type of an assist, because developing is an incredibly risky and an incredibly time sensitive job. So there is no immediate answer, unfortunately. I mean, if you look at the permits that are being pulled, even just here in Oregon, we're below the prior peak from 2006 and 7.
The most desirable land, when looking at another graph, because I'm a graph junkie, when looking at another graph here, is it actually looks pretty similar. There's it says on average 70 some odd % of builders are whining. I'm sorry. They are talking with the National Association of Home Builders about a shortage of A lots. And about 60% are talking about a shortage of B lots, and about 50% talking about a shortage of C lots. So that's more than half of your community, and that's nationwide. So there's just that much land, which probably could be developed. It's just not available. That's the solution. We can talk about it all we want, but let's make land more available.
Let's try.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question on that. Availability of land, but also community pushback. Is that something you guys deal with most projects?
Yes. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. If you buy 5 acres on the east side of Bend and you live there for 15, 20 years and development creeps in, it is hard, for yourself, your family to get over
Parking, noise.
Yeah. I mean, the potential of development coming into your backyard. And so I understand why people's emotions drive their reaction to development. And then at the same time, there's other fallout that occurs here in the city of Bend. You guys, our houselessness issue is, again, bipartisan. It is a real thing, right? And we're not going to, I know, jump into that today, but it is a byproduct of the lack of supply and the lack of affordability. There is no other way that you can really dice that, and so, all types of lots, we don't have a lot of supply, and there's not a lot coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for anybody who's in local or state government, if you're listening, please help. Thanks. We'd appreciate it.
I'm sure they're trying.
All right. I'm literally, we're going to take a left turn here.
I was about to say that when I was thinking about this next one.
We are going to take a total left turn. Builders and preferred lenders. Now, before we talk about if you have any preferred lender relationships, I, as a loan officer, and we have a lot of loan officers that listen to this podcast, have been burned many times. And I've built deep resentments over preferred lending relationships. And I have another builder who shall not be named locally that I am a preferred lender for, and it has been a large part of my business. I'm forever grateful for it.
I'm so happy for you, Randy.
But there are other builders out there.
Because otherwise
yeah.
you spend, you can spend, I'm sure many of our listeners spend years working with clients, helping their credit score, getting everything going. They decide that they want to go look at these beautifully built homes. They get really excited and, oh, well, actually the preferred lender is able to just do so much more for me. So I'm just going to go work with them.
Loan officers we're class act whiners. We can whine with the
I thought you
best
said
of
home
them.
builders are whiners.
Oh no, we're the
We're
next
right
level
there
of
with you.
we're
Okay,
right there with you, maybe even a little bit worse. We like
Yeah.
to whine about rates and preferred lender relationships. But how does that work? And what is, I guess, rather than, let's not talk about your preferred lender, let's talk about what is important as a builder when you're working with a lender, whether
or when
they're
you're looking
preferred
to
or not.
choose
Yeah.
a preferred lender too. So if
Right.
anyone lenders are listening and they would like to get in with a builder, maybe in their area, we have a lot of listeners all across the country. So
Yeah.
what's most important?
Yeah. I'm glad we referenced the question this way. It's never about the kickback. It's very rare. I don't know any builders receiving actual monetary kickbacks, and I hope that that's not a thing, because that makes it tough. Truth in Lending, name of the podcast. The important thing I think for people to realize is the nature. It's two different sports. New home sales and the rest of the real estate market are, in my opinion, are literally just two different sports. And when you have a preferred lender, it means you have a partner who understands what it takes to see the escrow through completion and what the builder's facing with timelines, what the client's facing. In a lot of scenarios, they're working to sell an existing home. And so much like the telephone game, the more people involved in the transaction actually increases the odds that the client ends up dissatisfied at some point along the way, right? And the goal is to finish so strong that not only the builder, but all the people that touch that client along the way are well referred a year after they've moved in, 2 years after. And so for any builder, big or small, when you're evaluating who you want your preferred lender to be, somebody that's made mistakes in the past and learned from them, I would tell you that focus on that. Focus on the client experience, why that matters to you so much as a builder, and who's going to best complement that at your side. That goes everything from title, the lender, everything. If you recommend insurance, like why? Oh, thank you. First one. Oh, man.
No, that was fantastic.
Yeah. And I think, when it's a long transaction, it makes it that much more important to have someone who's going to be well representing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, staying on sort of the same thing, let's talk about builder incentives. And I want to get Greg involved in this because he is our real estate sector of the podcast, if you will. So how do those work? When do you decide to give them? Is it to drum up sales, or is it because builders are just really nice people? Greg, I'm letting you take it.
Well, and Greg, in fairness, earlier you asked how we combat the rising rates. Incentives have certainly, been a part of that. It'd be interesting to ask every lender in town, like, hey, when's the last time you didn't buy down a rate, or have a client choose that over an alternative use of some incentive?
They really just wanted the 7.75%.
I know.
So they could get a lender credit.
So I think incentives do two things. One, they help us with that client getting over the new normal of today's interest rates and being able to, swallow, I guess, what these first few years could look like. I think eventually we might see rates settle, but us telling people like, hey, don't worry, rates are going to fall, just refinance in 2 years. I think I wouldn't want that going on in my model homes. They also help the buyer feel like there's something that they're getting, right? As we get pummeled by social divide, interest rate hikes, cost,
Inflation,
and just pure inflation, it gives a victory back to that client to say, hey, use this where it's going to benefit you the most. And so that's what we're seeing most of our consumers do is use that for rate buy down or prepaying some of their closing costs.
Yeah. I know I had some clients recently that went new construction, and that's what really brought them there, was getting a credit. They bought down the interest rate a bit. Yeah, they got a deal. They got the countertops that they really wanted. And it just really brought them into the new home market and the idea of it, which was really nice.
Yeah.
And all buyers right now just really want to get a deal. They want to win.
I think we all do
they
that,
want
right?
a sale.
I mean, we smile and we laugh, but I think we all want to feel like when we made our buying decision that we got what we paid for.
Yep.
You know, and I think it's important.
And there's, let's just use $5,000 incentive, right?
Yep.
Whether it's from a builder or lender or a realtor giving up some of their commission. What you can save by buying down the rate using that money versus a reduction in price, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. So those incentives really do stir up a lot of that buying. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Oh, you're off the hook.
Well, would you like to help us read the Truth in Lending Mortgage News, Dan?
Sure, I'll do whatever you guys tell me
Okay.
to. I'm on the spot.
All right.
Well,
Why
within
don't you
reason.
read that first headline?
CPI today came in as expected. The market initially had a positive impact and has since leveled off, and rates remain flat, even though the 4% year over year is the lowest in 2 years.
Wow. I couldn't have done a better job
You did
myself.
great.
Yes, you could.
That was
Yeah.
great.
Now we all know CPI.
Okay, Greg, you're up on the next one.
Oh, all right. It has been widely reported that the Fed is going to pause interest rate hikes after today's CPI data. Fed rate hike decision tomorrow, 6/13.
Wait,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow,
Day,
6/13.
big day tomorrow.
Today's
guys.
Today is
Yeah.
6/13.
So tomorrow.
Vance,
So tomorrow.
what's your
Is the
crystal
Fed-
ball? What's your crystal ball, Vance?
They're going to hold, but it's going to be, I'm going to quote Matt Graham from MBS Live. Shameless plug for him there. I'm going to say it's going to be a hawkish pause, meaning they are going to pause hawkishly.
Hawkishly.
Right? They are going to be very
so much.
firm.
They're going
in
to
their
scare us.
pause.
They're still going to scare us even with a pause.
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
Because they're going to leave it wide open, and that's why the market didn't react as positively today with the CPI data that we assumed that it would. It came in as expected, if not better than expected in some different areas. So I'm thinking that they're just going to go in and they're going to be tough, and they're not going to raise anything
How do you think rates will react to that?
negatively.
Yeah.
I do too. I think they'll hedge for the next one. Yeah.
All rates ever do is just negatively get affected.
Come on,
Nothing good ever happens.
Okay. The Wall Street Journal reports insurance companies are curbing new policies in risky areas nationwide. Oh, sorry, California. But it's not just
I thought we were
California.
part-
It's
yeah,
all
forgot
over the
that.
place. So
Yeah.
it has actually happened, and I've heard in Southern Oregon where the wildfires were really, really bad, southern and western parts of Oregon over the last couple of years where folks just cannot get insurance on their homes
Yeah.
after they've been rebuilt.
Is it geopolitical risk too, though? I know I'm kind of going off the rails here, but look at San Francisco right now. Have
Yeah.
you guys been following what's going on there with just exodus of hotel owners and this and that? I mean, so I don't know, something to watch for.
Wow.
Interesting. I haven't heard about that.
Read it. Come on.
Read it.
I'll have to. We touched on this last week, but the jobless claim increased far more than we expected to last week. So estimated at 235,000 actually came in at 261,000.
Yeah. And if that number keeps going up, what will happen?
Recession.
Rates will go down.
Rates will go down.
Rates will go down. I had someone ask me today, I had an application for a cash out refinance, and they asked me, and they said, when do you think rates will go down? And I said, well, for the last 12 to 18 months, I've been saying 12 to 18 months. So to answer your question, I think rates will go down in 12 to 18 months.
They're like, so now?
Dan, what's the next one?
CoreLogic says 1.2 million people have negative equity in Q1 of this year.
Wow. Wow.
That was a surprise. You guys, I saw that,
really?
as some of the, that surprised me.
Well, what a lot of that is folks that are buying with less than 5% or less down. And in Central Oregon, and
You're
I
right,
think,
yeah.
in Central Oregon, we're sort of immune to this. We're actually seeing property values
Start to increase.
again. But on other parts of the nation, this is a much bigger pool of info to pull from. 1.2 million is a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But reminder for those casual listeners, you only lose when you sell.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Equity is an imaginary number.
I did a lot of transactions in December, January, and with everyone, I warned them, I'm going to send you this HomeBot report. You're going to be tracking the value of your home, but you're going to see it go down, and that's okay. The odds are that you are going to see it go down, but it is okay.
My parents, who never listen to the show,
Oh, come on.
every time we talk, they're just like, yeah, well, I checked Zillow and it says that my house has gone up another $4,000. And I love it. And this is not to bash on Zillow, but that they are also just pulling data, right?
Absolutely.
It's not an actual value. A value of a home is determined by the seller of the property and the buyer on the property. That's how the value of the home is determined.
Yep.
So average rate as we record the show, pretty flat across the board. Really not much change. Pretty dead spot on where we were last week on 6.7. Right? Am I just behind a day? Today's really the 13th.
Yes.
Come on, man.
Yes. it
Wow.
Halfway through June.
Oh my goodness.
Almost.
Wow.
Don't forget, Juneteenth is next week too, so it's a federal holiday. Get your closing disclosures out on time.
That's right. 3-day weekend coming up. Do we have any errors from last show? I've already played the exit music, so even if we did,
That's it.
that's it. You guys can message us at Truth and Lending Podcast.
You can
on
let us know our
Instagram.
errors.
You can let us know our errors. Dan Pahlisch from Pahlisch Homes, thanks for joining us.
You guys, thanks for having me on. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's nice to get to know you guys
You
a
were
little
pretty
bit.
awesome.
Super fun.
I'm going to put my pants back on, and you guys stay classy, potato heads.
Dear Lord.
Oh, you're
Check out
good,
the
man.
video, see if he's being honest or not.
This is very nice.
Is that payback from last week?
I got you back.